Welcome to Vatech's Lunch and Learn series. I'm Jim Mayer, Education Team Director.
And I'm Paul Satone. I'm the Vatech West Coast Education Specialist out here on the West Coast.
So welcome everybody for this short 20-minute session. Today we're going to be talking about getting the perfect pan, specifically the perfect panorama in really 3 easy steps. So we look forward to taking you on this journey, and thank you for joining us on your lunch hour. A couple things I'd like to start off talking about today is our Customer Learning Center. We have a whole host of educational tools for your office within this CLC, and I basically want to take you there now. We're going to be working from this throughout our next 20 minutes of showing you where everything's at. So I went to our Vatech website. I'm going to click on Service and Support here and scroll down, and you've got your Customer Learning Center here. So whether you have a cone beam device or a 2D pan or looking for some intraoral help or even software, everything's going to be on here. So in this case, I'm going to go to my green CT2, and what it's going to ask me to do is going to ask me if I have an account. So if I do have an account, you saw it took me to my web page. Otherwise, you're going to go here, create an account, put all your office information in there. Under product, choose whichever device you have or your software and click register. What that will do is it will take you to, in this case, I went to the green CT2. If you look under the screen CT2, you've got a whole host of training. You've got your panoramic patient positioning video, CVCT positioning, how to capture a CAS model, and other resources down here, specifically some PDFs on patient positioning and everything through there. So that is a good resource we're going to be using today. Also, if you're looking for additional webinars under our webinar session, it will show you a whole host of webinars that we are going to be providing in the upcoming weeks and months.
So what is the perfect pan? Obviously, we want a great diagnosable image. So what are our steps to get there?
If you look at this pan here, you can see the condyles, are straight up and down on the pan. You can see here, we have a nice smile that's via the jaw. I can actually see my PDL and my pulp canals in my anteriors, and also a clear sinus floor. So those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. And everybody had submitted some questions, and let's look at the flip side of this, of what is not the perfect pan. What common things do we come across? And Paul, I'll let you kind of take it from here.
Common things we're talking about here, blurry anterior. So why are we getting those blurry anteriors? There could be a couple different reasons for that. We'll kind of go through that. So the angle of the spine could be causing that. Also, cutting out the condyle is a big one. Basically, the head is tilted too far back, right? And it throws those condyles out of view and cuts those, which also actually attributes to the blurry anteriors as well. So there's kind of a lot of things going on at once that can be causing problems. And then, of course, patient movement. With this is really, really important to get that quality image, not so grainy. A lot of times when it's very grainy, there's a lot of patient movement in there.
That, like you said, the head position really is the whole thing with this of some of the issues we often have.
Right.
If we position properly, we should be able to go back and get, we'll call it a clinically accurate or diagnosable pan. And that's really what this next few minutes we're going to talk about. And moving forward on there. Paul, let's start with our basics of patient positioning and what appliances do we need to use. So to give you a visual of those, I know you have some of those appliances, but I'm also here on our Customer Learning Center. I'm going to go to my device. I'm going to scroll down here to our patient positioning guide and download it on my computer here. So everybody has access to this. Just remember that. And we're going to scroll to this appliance checklist. So you need to make sure you have these appliances. And Paul, you're going to be talking about 2 of these, right? You're going to be talking about the bite stick, the importance of positioning in that. And then if we don't have, the patients are fully edentulous or class 3 where they cannot bite into the bite stick, when do we use the edentulous cup?
Right.
So let's start with the bite stick there. There's your chin rest bite stick.
Yep. We have the standard chin rest and the standard bite stick. Just slides right in like that. Patient will bite and pull it down so it's nice and snug.
So basically, you're ensuring that their anterior teeth are in that bite stick groove. And a lot of times, like you did, you just pushed on that or pulled that down, and that's going to get their chin firm on the chin rest there.
Yeah.
Now, Paul, I know we often come across patients that can't really get their anterior teeth in there or fully edentulous. So let's look at our chin cup next.
Yes. So
That's going to come out.
edentulous patients, we can use this little chin cup device. It goes right into the same slot on the high chin rest, and they simply slide their chin right up to the angle of it, just like this.
Right. And now often I'll have offices where they'll gently close on a cotton roll to separate the arches a little bit on there, and that will help with patient positioning. So what this does is it keeps them from going too far anterior or posterior, too far forward or backwards, to keep them in that focal trough. And that's another question that people said is, I can't keep my patients in the focal trough getting the blurry anteriors or overall poor images. So that, let's make sure everybody has those 2 cups there, and those are our appliances that we're going to be using.
Yep.
All right. So next, Paul, I think what we can do is we can look at the the capture screen is going to be another thing. So one of the things that we talked about on there was, what do we have if we have issues with patient movement? Sometimes we're dealing with older patients or pedo patients or kids that, can't stand still. So we do have within our software, I'm going to go up to acquisition, and let's go over to our panorama, and this window should look familiar. Here is our positioning window. And Paul, you want to kind of go through the difference between high resolution and green, really on scan times to get the patient in the machine and out of the machine.
Yeah, so there's definitely some confusion. I think sometimes it just says green under image option. So your system might be set to high resolution, most likely is, and the green option is basically cutting that scan time in half. So it's called the green setting, but it's at half the amount of time. So the regular pan is about 13 seconds, and the green setting is about, I think, Jim, is like 7 point something in there.
Yeah, it takes it down to really less than 6.8 seconds scan time, which is the rotation on there.
Right.
And you're still going to get a high quality image. It's just going to get the patient in and out with those patients that do have issues or radiation concerns, really, on there for that. So that's definitely one of the things there. Right. So now I know a lot of times when our patients come back, we get this all set up and we bring them in, and then there's issues with dealing with patients of getting them lined up properly, right? I think the next step in getting the perfect pan is patient communication. You telling them what's going to happen. We all know we have our 3 positioning beams, but really the more we tell them, the more comfortable they're going to be at our office. So if I inform you, Paul, hey, you're at my office, we're going to put you in this machine, you're going to be biting on this bite stick, show them the bite stick groove, where your hands go, where your feet go. We're going to cover that soon, but really telling them that we're going to be lining up and moving your head around and tipping your head up and down and lining some laser beams. They know what's going to happen. So it's going to have them be more relaxed, and also it's going to have them really have a better patient experience at your office on knowing what happens there.
Right.
So let's talk about patient entry, even before we get into any of these beams. And I'm going to go back to our website. So let's come here. Within here, we have what we're talking to patients about, or really how we talk to the patient. So let's download this, which you can do at your office, to our positioning guide right here. This is how are we talking to the patient. So here, Paul, you want to run through this, telling us why and how we're putting our hands and feet and head, and then what the instructions are?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking to the patient, we want them to understand what they're doing. So starting with the hands, we want those hands, palms facing up to the bottom of the handlebar, the feet aligned with the column, feet shoulder width apart, have them take that step forward so their back is at a slight angle, and that really just props up the spine. And then the head, chin on the chin rest, and aligning in the grooves of that bite stick, making sure they're not sliding around in that bite stick as well, and they're stay there and they're in a solid position.
Right. And Paul, let's talk more about the importance of the hands on the machine. So I'm sitting here, and if I'm in the machine like this, often I'm tense at the office. I don't want to be here. What's going to happen? What happens when I do hold with my palms facing up?
So it relaxes you, relaxes the shoulders, pulls those shoulders down. Especially important if the patient has big shoulders. You want those shoulders kind of as relaxed and far down as possible. So turning the hands underhand, that's what that kind of does there.
Basically,
right.
From here to here, what really drops my shoulders down on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, the more tense they are, the more they're going to be like shaking without even realizing it.
Very true. Yeah, very true on there. So, and then really, once we have them positioned, we have them swallow, we put the tongue flat to the roof of the mouth. I always have them close their eyes, and why is that? What does that do?
They tend to, if you have the eyes open, they tend to watch the arm rotating around without even thinking about it and doing micro movements, which really can affect the image quality. So I think it's a general rule, have everybody close their eyes for whether it's 2D or 3D, and as a general rule.
For sure, I think that's a good idea on there. So, so the next step is, we've talked about our patients, communicate with them, have everything set up. We technically have the patient in the machine like you showed, Paul, with their hands, palms facing up, standing close to the device so their chest is close, biting in the bicep group. Now let's talk about our 3 positioning beams. And I'm going to go back into my slide deck here. And on that download, you can download, it really goes through all the positioning beams that we have, or what I call bells and whistles specific to our device, to make this simple for you to get the patient in, get the patient out, get the scan we need for a clinically accurate scan. So Paul, take us through these 3 positioning beams here.
Yeah, so number 1 is your mid-sagittal light. So when we have the patient come into the machine, bite on that bite stick, making sure that spine is upright. That's really important to get these 3 steps correct, because if they're not in there, their spine is angled, they're leaning over, it's going to be really difficult to get these 3 steps correct. So once they're in there, they're biting, we want to line up that mid-sagittal vertical laser light down the center of the face. I tend to picture like an oval. Their head is at an oval, and you're slicing that oval in half, because you don't want to go by the go by the nose or any of that, or the bite, but you want to right through the philtrum in the eyes.
Yeah, so I always talk about going right between the eyes.
Yes.
And right through the philtrum, a little skin fold underneath the lip, not down the center of the midline, because not everyone's midline. So
yes,
between the eyes, right here. And a lot of times we'll have to actually grab their head and move them left to right to get them right where we want them to be. So you're all gloved up. You can grab the patient and move them around to do that.
Right. Next is going to be the Frankfurt horizontal laser light. So we want that from the top of the tragus to the bottom of the orbit. So you're hitting those buttons up and down to move that light. So first get it to the tragus first. Once you do that, it may be higher or lower. So then you have to assess. So if it's higher, you have to raise the patient's head up, or if it's lower, means it's your 2 patients too high, you have to lower the head down. So that's really important to get that patient in that natural head position, which really that's what that line is doing.
And Paul, I think this is something that is one of the big things that people have issues with. So let's talk about this specifically, that head position with that Frankfurt horizontal beam. And then I know one of the things we showed that slide where we had all that spinal shadowing. So Paul and I are going to talk track over this short video here, but while it plays, notice the spine, notice how close their chest is. And this is the Frankfurt horizontal beam where we're tipping the head down, running that light from the top of the tragus, the M4 notch of the eye, and getting the patient lined up there.
Right, raising it up a little bit.
Yeah, one thing I do notice is a lot of times the patients will do this, they'll hunch down. So push up on the back of the head. It's going to raise, make sure they stand up straight and tall. And that's going to be another thing that's really going to help with the positioning. So look here, nice head position, occlusion tip down 10 degrees. What happens next, Paul, whenever they're not, they're tipped too high?
We'll get a flat or too wavy if it's their head's too far down.
Right. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is the canine beam.
Mm-hmm.
Center of the canine, and we're talking about focal trough. That's right in the center. We have that nice clear anterior. Look what happens if it goes too far mesial or too far in front of that. What we get is our blurry anteriors again. Or too far posterior, we get everything crowded. So those are going to be some really important things. And then if you look here, here's kind of another view of that canine like Paul was talking about, where you have that line, and it's a little slide bar underneath to go right back through there. So
yeah, it's really important to get on the actual tooth itself.
And ultimately, that should give us our nice looking pan here, right? That nice smile, condyle straight up and down.
Yep.
And here's kind of what we looked at in the beginning, where the head's tipped up too high, that Frankfurt horizontal beam's off, and that blurring anterior, condyles are flared out all the way through there.
Right.
Perfect. All right. So Paul, let's talk more about a couple other things that came in that patients had questions on, or what I call more difficult patients, or the patients that are harder to deal with as far as patient positioning. So
Right.
what are our top three, I think, that really came in for those difficult patients?
So patients with a small neck, not really elongated neck, that tends to be an issue. So
they're like
definitely,
kind of like this, right?
yep, have those palms facing up, get those shoulders down as much as possible. Some patients, it's going to be a little bit out of position, and that's you can't really do anything about that sometimes. But we want to do the best we can, so get those shoulders down on there.
Right. I've also had some offices where they have the patient sit in a chair like I'm doing now, and instead of having them hold onto this, I just have them relax their arms to their side and really just relax down, and that's going to drop their shoulders down from being here or even here to just have them relax, push that chair right up against the machine, and it's going to get them right in close to the device there. You're going to get really close there, which will help specifically with those patients, so the no neck patients on there.
Yeah. And then the other one would be question wheelchair. Our devices are meant to be able to roll the wheelchair in. You can have them propped up with a pillow or a book if they're too short for that. It's kind of a common way to handle that.
Yeah, so if you have that patient, like you said, that's hunched over in a wheelchair down like this, a lot of times you need to grab some sort of pillow or something, either put it underneath them or even behind them.
Yeah,
and that's going to get them, standing up a little straighter and just wheel that wheelchair right in. As long as the wheelchair doesn't have any handles coming up really tall, that rotation should clear all the way through there. And then I think lastly, we have our pedo patients or our kids, really shorter patients. The machine goes down very far, but sometimes we do need to put some books or something for them to stand on, or a step stool, and then using that fast scan. The other thing that came in was really tall patients. It's difficult for staff members to position when the patient's really tall and you're trying to position way up here and looking up. That's hard to do. So if you have that really tall patient, just sit down in a chair, then you're going to be right on the same level where you can move their head and kind of go through there. So I think that really helps. And that's feedback that we've had on site while we do our trainings. And really all this feedback has come from other offices. So Paul, let's kind of sum this all up with our 3 steps. I'm back at my customer learning center. I'm going to go through our 2D operator panoramic positioning guide here. It's a 1-page document you can also download. And this really takes us quickly through.
Right.
Number 1, raising the machine up. What's next, Paul?
Getting that spine upright, which is super important, because if you don't get that step right, it's going to throw all the other steps off. So you want to have the patient step into the machine. When they bite in the bite stick, notice how the chest is, if that's close to that chin rest or to that platform. You want it close, because what you don't want is you don't want them biting and leaning over so that their neck and spine is at an angle. So you want that spine as upright as much as possible on that step.
Right. Then we do our mid-sagittal light. We talked about moving the head right around. And then what's next? 2 more steps.
Then our Frankfurt horizontal. We're moving that line up and down. Put it on the tragus. We want to view it on the orbit. If it's higher or lower, we adjust the head for that, and then move on to the canine light.
Yep. Close your temple sports, canine light, and then we take our image there.
Yeah.
So really, those are all our options there. I think from here, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and let's go ahead and kind of close this out. If you do have any questions, you can email us. It's the pop-up on the screen there, or education@vatechamerica.com. Go ahead and email us. You'll get a follow-up email with some contact information also. And to reiterate about our website, there's our webinar schedule, looking at future events, also down here on our schedule right there. Also log into that customer learning center. Paul, I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today for our Lunch and Learn series, and we look forward to having everybody for some additional events in the future.
Thank you.